Hello, Beth. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm so good, Sarah. It's so nice to see you. How are you?
I'm good. So, for everyone listening, we've known each other for a very long time. We grew up together basically in Philly in our early adult years,
Yeah.
and crossed paths basically multiple times a week with our professions. I was a publicist. Beth is all things event planning in every way, shape, or form you could possibly think of. So we were constantly seeing each other during the week at different like society events and things. So fun.
Yeah.
But I am just so excited to talk to you about basically everything. We're going to start off with the business side of things. But my Richie's, Beth, is like us. She's on the path to growth. She's constantly looking for ways to be more authentically living in a way that feels right, and her business aligns with that fully. So I think you're one of the best people to talk to about this. And I'm just so excited you're here. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I remember looking up to you truly. I remember working for other people full time. I was working for a restaurant at the time, and I remember you were doing all these different creative projects, and I saw you and Melissa and a bunch of different just badass business women doing their thing, and I was like, man, I wish I could do that. Like, I wish I could have my own business. And
Thank
and
you.
when I started my business, you were one of the people the only people when I started, and I was like, maybe I'll do some PR. You were the only person in PR who was nice to me in Philly, who literally you came and you were like, look, this is what you need to do. I'll help you with this. I'll do that. Like, I really, really respect the hell out of you because you've always viewed other women or other business owners as like equals and like, what can we do together? How can we help each other grow? As opposed to like, no, there's not enough for you and me. And I've always loved that. So like when I heard of the Make Life Rich movement, I was like, that's so Sarah. So I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, so I'm crying already.
Oh,
Thank you. I cry every episode. This one was the
I
quickest.
probably will too.
Dude, so for me, I know exactly what you mean. And like, God love and bless all of the PR people in Philly. I feel you guys, I get you. But for me, gatekeeping has always felt so lame and like very lack mindset. For me too, I think because I just felt so free and happy doing what I wanted to do, I wanted everyone to feel comfortable just to take the chance to try. And you were like such a force within the event planning world, and literally half of events and them seeming and feeling successful to your client is the wrap up. Like, what did you get? Who knows that this happened that wasn't there?
Right.
So it was like, duh, of course you needed to add this in. This is so smart. You can add more money to your package, and like they're only going to be happier, and it's a beautiful cycle. So
Yeah.
I've never wanted to gatekeep information, but I appreciate you for saying that. It means a lot to me because, I got where I got in life because certain people helped me and did not gatekeep information. It just
Thank
seems silly to do so, but
Yeah.
thank you for saying that. That was so
Yeah.
precious and
Of course.
sweet. I'm never going to forget that. So, can you tell us a little bit about where your career kind of started? You said that you started at a restaurant, but what really led you to what was like your first event where you're like, okay, I can do this full time. Like, this is me all day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I grew up in the hospitality industry since I was 15 years old. I was working at a banquet facility at this like high-end retirement community in New Jersey. It's actually where I met my husband. So
Oh,
literally from the jump, I was working in high-end events and I was working on the side that touched the guests the most directly. So I've always understood the guest experience because I was face to face with the guests for most of my career. And throughout college, I thought I was going to be a journalist or an English teacher. I actually did not go to school for events at all, but then events sort of like found me. I planned a national marketing conference in my junior year in college with one of my professors just as a project, and I fell in love with it. I've always loved like problem solving, and it's like a big puzzle basically, and taking all the pieces and making them work. And then fast forward through a number of different, I worked for Dave and Buster's, and I worked for a really high-end catering company in Philly called Brule Catering, multiple facilities for them. I worked for the Palm Restaurant, worked for a startup out of Austin. That was really where I think I found my entrepreneurial spirit the most, between the Palm and Snap Kitchen. But when I was there, I was so blessed to be part of this great marketing team. Tressie Lieberman, I'm going to shout out another amazing woman. She was the CMO who led the team at Snap Kitchen, and she was just amazing and challenged us to be super, super thoughtful and creative and just like the sky's the limit. And so I've always approached things with like, all right, biggest idea, and then like, let's make it, maybe we can bring it down to earth, but why not have your biggest idea? So at the time, Sweet Green was our biggest competitor. They had the Sweet Life Festival. And I was like, well, what can we do as a health food company to kind of bring people together, build community around our mission? And our mission was really to provide healthy food to as many people as possible. And make it easy to eat healthy. So I actually pitched the mayor of Philadelphia. I reached out with an email. I had known him from the Palm restaurant, and I was like, look, I know that you love the open streets concept. When the Pope was here, why don't we take that and really turn this reputation that Philly has for being the unhealthiest city out of 67 or county or something in Pennsylvania for 6 years in a row. I was like, let's try to just open the streets of Philly and let people explore it on foot, on bike, on, rollerblades, however they want, but really to kind of like get people out there and get active. And I pitched them in April. It wound up happening in September. And between then, I opened all these stores and did all these amazing things. And I sat there, we had 40,000 people come to the first annual Philly Free Streets. And that was the day that I was like, no matter what happens with this company, I am going to do events. I'm going to do experiential. This is what I'm born to do. And when I got laid off a year later, my husband called my bluff and was like, you've said you wanted to start your own business forever. So are you going to start your own business? And I was like, well, shit, I guess so. So 5 years
Yes.
later, here I am.
Oh my God, I love that. Okay, guys, so just to like peel back some humility from what Beth just said for a second here, I remember the very first free streets. I think I literally walked to the 19th and like Chestnut location to like pop up and be like, oh my God, this is happening. Like, we walked all the way from South Philly.
Yeah.
I think it was literally Melissa and our friend Garrett, and we were smoking a J the whole way, and we were just
Yes.
like,
That is what I wanted everybody to just explore. We had like 10 miles that we shut down. I remember,
yeah, explain the layout. If you've ever been to Philadelphia, it is exactly like every other major city you've ever been to. So think of not even a quarter, we'll say an eighth of the city being shut down so that cars cannot drive it. You can only walk it, bike it, people. That's it.
yeah,
But 40,000 people on an eighth of Philadelphia looks huge. The
it was
impact was so crazy.
crazy.
People were so happy. It was
Yeah.
like joyful. It felt like an occasion when it was literally just a free street to walk down. But
Yeah.
tell us about what that looked like systems wise. Like, that was
Yeah.
a big undertaking.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. So peeling that back, we opened eventually nine stores in the city. I think we had opened 4 or 5 by this point. So in the midst of doing this, we're also doing the daily operations of opening retail stores across Philadelphia, and launching an app at the same time. So I was director of marketing for the region, so I'm doing all of this stuff, but I was using any other time. I think I was working like 16 hours a day, pretty much, working with the city rep, Sheila Hess and her team. She was amazing. Working with, I mean, the police and the Office of Travel and like so many different, and transportation and so many different people in the city to make this happen. So what it was we shut down South Street from river to river. So basically, I guess that's 24 blocks of South
Yeah.
Street. And then over the bridge, South Street Bridge, up to like the Strawberry Mansion area, we closed down Martin Luther King Drive the way that it typically is on the weekends in the summer. And then you could bike all the way up to Strawberry Mansion. And there were along the way, because I was able to negotiate that Snap Kitchen was the premier food sponsor, we had every mile marker, we had a tent with different samples of food. We even had this ice cream bike that I rented that I will never forget, seeing someone with like one of those little cart bikes at 5 a.m. riding it down South Street with the Snap Kitchen logo. I felt like I made it. I remember we stopped it at the South Street Bridge. We were like, we're not going to go down the South Street Bridge with this thing. It's a little precarious,
Heavy.
but it was
Yeah.
just really cool. And like every single executive came up, like the VP and I biked 18 miles on an Indigo bike. And I hadn't ridden a bike for fun in so many years. And the coolest part too was I was able to bring the fitness community of Philly in with it, because community is everything to me. It's not just me that I wanted to show off or Snap Kitchen. Like, we had over 60 fitness vendors that applied. So we had all these different yoga classes and like fitness classes and like Tai Chi and dance and like so many different things and performances. And then we also were able to partner with this, it was at the time this technology company that rewarded people for activity. So we were able to track people's activity. And I think it was an average of people biked an average of 9 miles, walked an average of 4, and ran an average of 2 or something like that. So if you do the math of 40,000 people, like how much activity is that in one day? It was just so cool. Um, and so it really inspired me to just be like, you can really do anything that you put your mind to, and also reminded me that network is everything. Because if I
Yes.
didn't have Mayor Kenny's personal email address, because I knew him when he was simply a council person at the Palm, it never would have happened that way. So I was glad that I
100%.
got to bring people in the fold with me too.
Oh, I love that so much. So tell me, where did you take this momentum from when it did come time for you to do your own thing with your own company? I know that you've really grown into some particular industries that are aligning with you in ways that, corporate sometimes can't really get involved with. So tell us about how it's felt to serve the companies and the organizations that are mattering to you that typically get overlooked for all kinds of various reasons.
It is so much fun to be able to design your life and design your week and design your work and what you want to do, because that's really what freelancing is if you do it right. It took me about 5 years to do it right, but I think I'm here. Um, I would say that, like, companies like startups or nonprofits can't always afford the expertise that they need. And a lot of the times they have people working so many hours because they really just aren't there to do what they were hired to do. They're doing things that they shouldn't be there to do. And so I'm really fortunate that now I get to work with, it's almost like I get to have my activism shine through my work. I get to work with organizations like the American Journalism Project, which is an incredible national organization that funds local nonprofit journalism offices across the country. And I got to bring together a convening of their grantees and the people that support them and the organization, and like just seeing the impact in the room, like it gave me chills, especially after 3 years. I'm probably going to cry at some point too, especially after 3 years of like not knowing what my industry was going to be like, like, and after, and people forget with events, like 2020 wasn't the only time that events went away. Like, I graduated in 2009, they were gone. So like I had just been like, all right, we're back up, and now it's gone. But then I also get to work with, incredible organizations in the cannabis industry. I got to be really, really early in the cannabis industry because frankly, I was interested in it. It was 2018. I had just started my business. I had done a lot in tech. I really love tech startups. I love innovation. Sarah, I know you do too. Like, the new thing. Tell me about the new thing. And at the time on the East Coast, cannabis was the new thing. It wasn't in the West Coast. But there was an amazing woman that I worked with who did investment conferences. So I got to hear early pitches and meet the founders of, Green Thumb Industries and Magical Butter, and like so many of these big companies that you see now that are multi-state operators or household names, and got to network with the investors that were there in the room. And that was really cool. And then again, I brought it back to my community because I was like, these people don't look like the people that I know who are successful in the cannabis industry. So like, let's call it as I see it, and let's try to like get roots in the Philly cannabis industry. Met some amazing people who you and I are mutual friends with, especially shout out to Robin. And I got to then like see also the downside of it, the downside of growing industry so fast that's leaving behind the people that were pioneers in the industry that are behind bars. And so it became again more of an activism thing for me as well, trying to bring people into the room that weren't in the room even in 2015.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a really cool journey. I love working with companies that have impact. And the latest client that I signed, which I'm really excited about, is the Public Interest Law Center. So
Cool.
they really do a lot on behalf of the community. I'll let you look it up, the listeners, because I can't even begin to describe everything that they do. But yeah, so I've volunteered my whole life, and now to be able to say, hey, I know you need this project taken care of and you need the right expert to do it. You may not be able to hire someone full time, but let me get this off the ground for you and make you shine. That's what I'm here for.
Ugh, I love that so much. And you're the perfect person to do it for them. One, because your heart is so big, and I feel like the best events are like a chef that knows how to cook with love. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you've paid attention to every detail, which was what really drew me to your events because you cared about the client journey. The
Yeah.
customer experience was always at the forefront, and you could also tell just based on how your clients were feeling when the events were happening that you were handling both front and back end to where your client was enjoying and the customer was enjoying. So like that to me was always just a level of expertise and dedication that I think a lot of people can lose sight of when things get stressful, like the event planning industry is.
Thank you.
I would love to know your thoughts on. Okay, so our age group, guys, I'm 38. I graduated in 2007. I worked for a year on paper for someone else, and then the recession, I was fired.
Oh,
Because of that, I learned how to grow my business through recession times and then feel better times, and now we're back into a more restricted time frame. So you kind of grew up in that same up and down like undulation to where we were
yeah.
just kind of like young enough and blessed enough with no responsibility to float by and figure it out.
Yeah.
But I really believe that that has given you a leg up.
Hmm.
And I want you to talk about what having gone through that in 2009 prepared you for business wise for the basically the last 4 years of everything being taken away from us, some things subtly coming back, dealing with social pressures for the early people that came back. People
Yeah.
have to make money. Like, can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you and did you feel prepared? What did you have to switch up that you didn't think you would need to? Like, break that down for us.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I love talking about this. So, the recession in 2009, I am, if you've seen my podcast, I'm a type A plus person. I am one of those people that has had a 5-year plan since I can remember. For all intents and purposes, I hate this phrase, but like I did everything right. I went to college with, scholarships, and I went as an English major, and then I went into event planning, and I went full speed. I got like internships and all this stuff. I stacked my resume, and then it was like every single graduation speech was like, take a year off and volunteer. Good luck finding a job. Like it was just like, okay, have fun. And that prepared me. I think that also, that and like having to work my whole life, I think prepared me because I started to build a network. I was like, all right, well, I need 4 part-time jobs then. So I was working, I had a friend that opened a restaurant outside in West Philly and like West Parkside in there was like a tent and I was a waitress and like I worked there. I did liquor and bar promotions at night multiple times, sometimes a night. I mean there were so many things that I did. I worked for Starbucks. Like, you just had to make it work. I blew through all of my graduation money and then I worked for 6 months for a friend's father and mother, and it just was not a good scene. And Dave and Buster's actually found me. So what I basically learned from that was like I hustled. I knew that like if I went home to where I grew up, I loved where I grew up, but it wasn't the city. It didn't have events. I knew if I went back there, I wouldn't be able to survive and I wouldn't be able to thrive and do what I want to do. So I was like, I need to stay in Philly. So that was really my biggest concern was like paying my rent and staying alive. And then um, I didn't know that there was such a thing as event sales. And I didn't know that I was good at sales. So once I realized that I was good at sales and I was good at marketing, I think those two things really propelled my career. And so when everything shut down again, I did the same thing that I did when I got laid off. I called every single person that I knew. I started hosting networking events. I had virtual teas. I couldn't stop. I gave myself a few days to cry. I always do. I give myself like 2 or 3 days to cry and lay on the couch. And then I'm like, all right, well, you got to get back up. Like, there's nothing, there's no one, there's no safety net. Like, you got to get back up. And so that's really what I did. I mean, I remember I signed my biggest contract ever prior to the pandemic on March 9th of 2020. And I had a full client load. I was like flying high. One of those people that was like, COVID will be a thing for a few weeks, like just trying not to really think about what it really was happening. And then March 12th, all of my contracts started to like feel a little shaky. The world started to shut down. I was crying on the floor of a yoga studio, just like sobbing. It was like, what am I going to do? My husband's in hospitality. I had two companies. My other company was in hospitality. We had just launched Fabrica in Philly, which was a monster. It was like such a good campaign. We had such good client rapport, and then like everything shut down. So a friend called me and he was like, get up, everything will be okay. And I was like, look, give me a few days to cry, and by next week I'll have a plan. And I gave my clients 10% off if they decided to pay up front. And I gave them sometimes other incentives if they were stayed with me at all, especially if they were nonprofits, because I knew that budgets are what they are. I offered different services, and I really remembered, I was like, oh, in 2018, I did two hybrid events. I got to amplify those. So I just started amplifying them on my blog. I started talking about it on LinkedIn, and Sarah, the inquiry started pouring in. I could not believe it. I got so many virtual events. I got BPHL virtual in 2020. Like,
Oh my God.
it was wild. It was wild. And did I set the world on fire that year financially? Absolutely not. It was terrifying. But just knowing that, like, I did it again, like, I'm still here. It's 5 years later. I thought I was gonna have to shut this down multiple times. I thought I hated events. I was like, I don't even like this anymore. And now I'm like so happy that I'm still here. So it's that resilience I think that we've learned. And I think millennials, we get no credit, but I think we have learned, like, we didn't have a ladder. There was no career ladder for us. There were no
Yeah.
rungs. There were rungs missing. Some of us didn't have ladders. I always say we have a rock climbing wall, but some people just had a flat surface that they had to figure out how to navigate. And we've
Yes.
done it. You know what I mean? The closer you are to privilege, the easier it may have been, but like
Yeah.
it's just that resilience I think is what propelled me forward. And now I'm like, well, whatever. Like the resilience in my business is here. The resilience in my marriage is here from like the hard, 3 years. Like everything, you'll get through anything.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's very important that you talk about resilience because it is literally the secret sauce. Guys, there's no, like what Beth is saying can sound really trivial until you've gone through the fire. And it's like the meme I love with the dog where he's surrounded by fire and he's like, this is fine. This is
Yes.
fine. Like if you're a freelancer or an entrepreneur, that meme is your reality most days. And
Yes.
when you're able to trudge through and make it to the other side, you're definitely gonna have some singe marks and be a little burnt here and there, but those things heal. You can change those clothes and keep moving. But
Mhm.
you definitely, to me, are um, an exemplification of what it looks like to adapt and pivot for your industry. I think when you started, the other component that never really gets talked about, and I think it's really overlooked, is the technological advances that have happened, namely social media, from when
Mhm.
we graduated and
Yeah.
what we were taught in school that is basically analog now compared
Yeah.
to our reality, and then having to learn and be like, what? Like, our professors didn't even have access to Facebook when we were in college, guys. So, like, there's that,
We had to
okay?
have a college email address, but you had to also be like of a certain age to be on
Of a
Facebook.
certain
It
age.
was like a little virtual frat party for a little while.
Dude, it was so good. There were so many pictures of
Oh,
my butt
yes.
in like tight pants or a bikini in Miami, and I'm like, new butt tattoo on lock. Look, guys, like
I
dead
know.
ass. It was a wild west.
I know. I had to put like so many of my like stuff on private because you just were like uploading. God, it's so like embarrassing now, but like your whole
Yeah,
camera's feed into like an album the day after
yeah,
you got hammered. Like that's what we used to do. There was no filters, like
yeah.
nothing.
Permanent Snapchat was the
Yeah.
OG Facebook.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about what it's been like for you to utilize technology with these hybrid models. That was never something that could have even been dreamt up when you were in college. So, what did that look like for you? Basically, having to reinvent the model
Mhm.
and integrate technologies that are always changing and now always evolving. Like, that has to be a bit of a dance for you.
It was outrageous. It was absolutely outrageous. But as with most things in my career, it was a baptism by fire situation. I got hired by this company 7 weeks before a 3-day event. And when I say they had almost nothing actually finalized, that's not an exaggeration. They had a location, they had hotels, but they had like save the dates and some speakers, but like it was a lot. They didn't even
Yeah.
have an app. 7 weeks before the event. So
Oh my God.
I am now one of a three-person logistics planning team, and I was also handling the virtual component. And what I learned with this client that, God love him, had a lot of ideas and a lot of them were last minute, is that every single tiny nuanced change in virtual or in hybrid, like if you're in real time trying to tell people where to go, this happened here, don't go to this room, go to that room, like it was an absolute, I was working like 22 hours a day. So on site at the event. So I was like running the event all day and then in the cafe till 3 o'clock in the morning, making all the changes for the night, the day after. It was like ridiculous. And people think, oh, with an event app, you can just, push notifications. And I'm like, what is the first thing you do when you download an app? Disable
Hit
push
no.
notifications. That is the first thing that I do. So
Yeah.
like all these people were not getting the communications. And then you're seeing in real time the effect of like, crappy hybrid event execution. Thankfully, a lot of the growing pains happened on site, and it was great. It was with technologists, so we were able to get their like feedback on it. But I used an app called Socio, which now I don't even know if it still exists. I think it's been acquired, but it was basically a template, and so I had to input every single thing, and that was really, really a saving grace for me because I did not undercharge myself with virtual because I knew
Okay.
how much work it went into it because so many people were like, it's a Zoom meeting. And I'm like, no. If you do
No.
it right, it shouldn't be a Zoom meeting. And in the time of uncertainty, when everybody kind of paused after the pandemic, one of the things that I did when I was networking was I researched every single event software that existed and I tried to do demos. I tried to learn about it. I even got the project management software that I learned that I use now, Airtable, during the pandemic because I worked with like six different agencies on this one big event and it was just like amazing. So I feel like technology has such a power, but you really have to understand how to use it. And so many entrepreneurs do this. We buy like freemium technology because we're like, oh, I need this little feature. But then we have no idea the actual capacity of what we're buying. And we
Mhm.
buy so many little things that are freemium or $5 or $10 a month. But it's like if you just take the time to really look at Calendly and see what it can do, or really look at your Zoom account and see what it can do, like you may not need all of these things. And I think that's another thing that I learned really early on was a lot of the technology, virtual event technology, like bells and whistles. It's like it's got to be accessible to people. I learned that the hard way, actually. I'll tell your listeners like a hard lesson I learned like in the trenches. I did a really amazing fundraiser for a wonderful global nonprofit and we had an event app and I didn't even think about the fact that a lot of their audience didn't even know what single sign-on was. There was
Oh,
no like they didn't have Google email addresses, so like even the fact that they had to create an account was a point of friction. Did we
yeah.
get them on the app? Yes, but the communication looked a little bit different. But in the future, I wouldn't suggest an app for that client because it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's another part of event technology where we think that every client needs every single app, but sometimes simpler is better. And the more people that can access your event, the better. So the more red tape you create, the less people are going to want to join it.
Oh, 100%. And I want to pull out something you said there that I think is really important. I literally just did a podcast about this on Sunday. We're entering into the slow months of the year. I just heard the term J months, and then I was like, oh my God, it is the J months. January, June, July, bitch, of
Yes.
course.
Oh my God, it is.
So I was like, holy shit, the J months. And so many people get panicked because it's such a slow time for sales. And one of the things that I think people neglect is in that downtime, you can learn. You can
Mm-hmm.
learn and take it as a blessing and be like, whew, thank goodness I have these 4 weeks. Maybe I can go over my POS system and find something
Yes.
better. Maybe I can learn how to use my email marketing program to use more of the capabilities. But I
Yes.
love that you focus on that because it was I don't know how to say this delicately. During the pandemic, there was a lot of productivity shaming. And I understand it because a lot of people in that moment were like, don't ruin this piece for us. I have been working my balls off. I have three
Yeah.
kids, a 45-hour a week job. Don't fuck this up for me.
Yeah.
Stop posting your bread. Stop posting your freaking gains in your basement with your
Yes.
weights. I don't care.
Yes.
You're entitled to that, 100%. But there were a lot of people that were really freaking jazzed to have basically what turned into a 2 year work study to do whatever they wanted and figure it out.
Yeah.
And from that became a lot of, people that were interested in becoming entrepreneurs and actually doing something with it when it came time to turn back around and go back to their job.
Yeah.
So, what do you think would be, if you could give a new event planner any kind of bit of advice? They may not have the downtime of a pandemic, but we are in the slower months for at
Hmm.
least the next 2 months. If you're listening right now, it's June and July. June and July is what we're speaking of. But what would be your advice to them for how they could make the most out of these slower months before event season really kicks back up again?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is such a good thing because I think it's really easy, the tendency in these months to be like, "Ah, I just want to be outside. I'll go to the pool. I don't feel like sitting in front of my computer." I think the things that you can do, build your network and try to also learn, like you said. I think going to industry networking events. There's MPI is a great one. Get your CMP, start to register or study for your CMP exam if you're an early event planner. I got mine simply, I worked for a venue at the time, and I got mine simply to be on par with my clients so that they knew that I had the same information that they did. But getting your CMP is also great because you build community, you get do study groups, and you get to meet people. I have a lot of friends from that time in my life. I would say go to a lot of industry networking events because it's a slower season. A lot of event planners will be out. They'll be like, I just went to a Phillies game a couple weeks ago, and I got to meet a few suppliers that helped me with my hotel selection and my venue selection for my events, and really get to meet them and see them in person. That's really important. And then, I mean, there's so many things online. There's so much you can get inspiration for with events. Summer might not be busy event season, but there's festivals and things all around your town. Walk around, do those things, and really look at them as like a case study. Like you said, like what can you take from them? What can you learn from them? What can you learn not to do? Um, and also, if you're an event planner, relax during the times that you can. Um, Relax during the times that you can. For me, though, setting up administration and like systems is relaxing. So if you're like me, doing like a sort of like client onboarding system or getting a project management software, I'm going to say Airtable again. I should just have be sponsored by them because I love them so much. But like I built my Airtable over the winter break because I was like, I have nothing else to do. And then I built my client onboarding process at the same time. So try, even if it's like 2 hours a day, if you need to set a timer for yourself, like just try to do something for your business for a few hours a day because it's going to be busy season at some point and you're going to be like, man, I really should have set up this invoicing system so I don't have to do it myself or something like that.
The devil's in the details, guys, especially if you're an entrepreneur. 100% take advantage of that time. Um, I love that you have the dichotomy of working with these really huge global companies because of your proximity to Philadelphia, but you also have the benefit of living and existing in a small town.
Hmm.
So if someone is listening that is interested in becoming an event planner, but they don't really have the proximity of a city to kind of kick off their career,
Hmm.
what would you suggest would be a good way for someone to start an event planning company in a small town?
Oh, wow. I think start small. I think networking is really huge. I started my event planning career really honestly volunteering. A lot of my work where I learned a lot of the like grunt work that goes on behind the scenes in events and what really needs to happen for a successful event to happen is volunteering. There's always going to be volunteer opportunities in your town. Even if you start by like organizing a town cleanup, like that's an event. You will get knowledge that you can then start to put on your portfolio. It's really sneaky, guys. Like just volunteer to help organizations that you're passionate about. If you have someone in your family who's been affected by cancer, volunteered for Living Beyond Breast Cancer for a few years. I'm very passionate about the Human Rights Campaign. I volunteered for their local community chapter for a few years, planning their gala. You can even do small things like contributing or asking for silent auction items from those small towns to draw people from the nearby city to your small town. And there's so many virtual networking opportunities now, guys. Like virtual networking is here to stay, whether we love it or we hate it. Just sign on and get to know people. You can host even a virtual networking event of your own and just start to invite your network and tell them each person to invite a person. You'd be surprised what happens just by organically getting together with people.
For real. Honestly, guys, networking is gold. And if you're a chatty Cathy or you're already the person that likes to meet new people, lean into that
Yeah.
because you are part of a very small minority. And
Mhm.
the networkers are the movers and shakers that make everything go round. So
Yeah.
dive deep into that if you feel that in your soul because it's a really great way to have a Rolodex of people to be able to authentically work with and pull from for your entire career.
Yeah, and then they see you grow. They see where you've come
Yeah.
from and they help you get
Yeah.
where you're going.
Dude, it brings me such joy. I think back so fondly now that I'm not in Philadelphia. We've been gone for, it'll be 2 years in August. And I could like cry right now just thinking about all of the people that when we started, basically, I moved to Philly in 2003, but I didn't really start networking until 2007. And since
Mm,
that time frame, man, everyone that we grew up with is just doing such cool
I
things.
know.
They're changing the world.
It's so
They're
cool.
it's so nuts. It like gives me like goosebumps just thinking
Mhm.
about like what it can mean for you to network and the people that you will ultimately come across. And if you are just a good human and you keep in touch, you know, like you're going to watch people truly soar into
Yeah.
like such incredible places they were meant for. Like I feel that way about you. It feels so good to see you doing something that brings a smile to your face because so many people, for lack of a better phrase, aren't brave enough to believe in themselves and like really go for these huge goals. And when you do, it's just so beautiful to see for yourself, but for others who have known you to grow and like see that, it's such a beautiful thing to witness. So I'm just so glad we got to talk because it's so cool to just see over these like 15 years, like what has transpired and like how we've all come out together.
I know, I'm literally going through in my head and thinking like even the people that were I remember supporting the first Snap Kitchen stores, like everybody is doing something incredible and like finding their niche in the world and like
Yeah.
I think that also speaks to Philly too. Like there's
Yeah.
something scrappy about Philly where we're like, all right, fine, we're not New York. Fine, we're not Chicago, we're not LA, but guess what? We're Philly and we're going to get ours and we're going to get everything that we want. And I feel
Yeah.
like obviously our sports we tell that story, but I think the individuals in Philly and around and like the people that even temporarily find Philly as their home, I think we all kind of have that in common.
Do you know what I think it is now that you've said that? Philly lacks imposter syndrome.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I remember like my career as a publicist started quick. It came truly out of proximity to this incredible opportunity that happened to someone that I was close with and
Yeah.
they didn't really like believe in themselves enough to do it. And I'm like, you fucking go do this right now.
Yes.
And then it ended up turning into something really amazing for them that then trickled down to me and I got to start my PR career with a celebrity and that was like insane to me.
Yeah.
But in literally just being able to then from that moment forward I walk into town and I go to an event and they're like, "What are you?" "I'm a publicist."
Yeah. Yeah.
"No, I wasn't. I graduated into a recession. What I went to school for as a communications major didn't even exist or make sense anymore because of technology." So like
Yeah.
Philly was a beautiful place to say who you were and mean it and then just back up what you were saying.
Yes,
Like,
exactly. Say it and
oh,
then because we are also a very like show us, don't tell us. So
yes.
we show, like whether, and it's funny that you said we don't lack imposter syndrome because I think we do lack imposter syndrome, but I think even if we do have it, we like push it down and we're like, no, don't tell me that I'm not the shit because I'm the shit.
Yeah.
Like, don't
Yeah.
don't come at me like that.
Dude, the bravado of Philly is amazing for entrepreneurs. I will say that it was a
Yes,
good place for us to get started for sure.
it was, and I'm glad we're here together.
Dude, I love it. Okay, so I ask every guest this question, and then I want you to tell everybody what it is that you're doing right now in case they want to hire you or any of that fun stuff. So, what makes your life rich?
Mm. The time that I get to spend doing things that I love, whether that's inside of work or out. I just actually released an episode about, and I didn't come on this intending to, to be selling myself, but I just released an episode about my morning routine, and I have like anywhere from 2.5 to 4.5 hours in the morning to myself because as I've said to you and others, I haven't drank alcohol yet this year. It's something that I'm trying. I actually feel really good. I'm getting a ton of good sleep, but I wake up at like 5:30 in the morning. And so what makes my life rich is like getting to walk outside when the sun is rising and walk my dog and there's like no one around in my very
Yeah.
small town and like nothing's open yet and just being able to walk around and either listen to the silence or like start my day really, running or listening to music, like just being able to be like, Beth, what do you want right now? And just doing that. That is like the biggest gift in the world to me. I could cry about it because that's what every entrepreneur wants. That's why we do this, because that's why we struggle all the time, because we know that there are times in our life where like we're going to be able to get everything that we actually wanted and that we like write in all of our notebooks and that we like cry about at night. Like this period of my business is why I started it. And it's taken me a long, really difficult journey to get here, but like that's what makes my life rich is that like I designed it. And like I get to be like, hey, Beth, like what's good for you? Like do what's good for you.
Yeah. I love that.
Darn,
We're
I
crying
didn't
together. Ah, your autonomy brings me joy, friend.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Um,
Same to
no,
you.
dude, you're right. It's literally the reason why I do this. I think there's nothing that repels me quicker than someone telling me what the fuck to do, and I rage. I'm like, no, you
Yes.
want to tell me shit.
Yeah. Don't tell me
And
how it's always been done. I'm gonna
dude,
tell you how we're gonna do it. Yeah.
amen. And like every ounce of stress and suffering and work that's gone into it is ultimately leading to that glory of like our dreams being visualized and made real. So I'm
Yeah.
right there with you, girl. I feel it. You're even though like we've been doing this for so long, I think like we are just at the tip of what is possible for us, and it's just gonna come cascading down. It's just there was a lot of growth that needed to happen to get there, and we're
Yeah.
still so young. Like it's guys, the younger you are, don't do what your parents say. I like don't give a fuck what they think. They're wrong. Whatever world they grew up in is long gone. It won't
Not
even
the
be
same
written
world.
about in like TV shows anymore because it's so
Mhm.
irrelevant. Just do you.
Yeah, and I will say this that I had so many people my parents' age question when I would go from job to job to job, and I wouldn't stay at a job that wouldn't offer me a management position. And guess what? I probably would still be at a coordinator position if I didn't go for what I wanted because I was watching everything around me cave in. None of the management roles were available where I was. So I was like, okay, there's one here. I have to go there. And then I was like, you know what? I like networking, so I have to go here. So like my rock climbing wall worked for me.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have worked for our parents. There wasn't really that opportunity then, unless you
No.
had, generational wealth, which we can talk about in another episode. But I think that it's possible to do your life the way that you want it. You just have to like
Yeah.
constantly believe it, even when no one else does. And even if you don't actually believe it on the surface, you have to tell yourself that you believe it.
And it will come to be.
Yes.
It will come to be. 100%. Okay, tell everybody how they can hire you. You also have a podcast, which will be in the show notes. And then I'm going to link your website if you have any questions or you would like to talk about events or hiring Beth, any capacity that will be in the show notes. But give us a brief blurb of how people can work with you.
Yeah, so I do everything from consulting hours if you just have a question that you need a certified event expert for, but you don't have necessarily the budget to hire someone full time. I do consulting hours, either one or bulk. But I also do full scale event planning. So everything from selecting the destination, the city, the hotel, to all the logistics. And I really specialize in like the logistics of it all and the stakeholder experience. So making sure that your sponsors, your speakers, your exhibitors, your attendees, your partners, your media, everybody has a great experience. And that you can find on my website, which will be in the show notes, but it's at Beth Lawrence, www.bethlawrence.co. And then that is my Instagram as well. And then I host the Type A Plus podcast. It is a short form podcast that comes out every week on Thursdays, and it's just bite-sized tips to maximize your business and life.
I love it. High
High five. I miss you so much. I
five. I
can't believe
miss
we
you
have to
too.
find a three-dimensional way to hang out at some point soon.
Dude, we will meet in Philly or somewhere at some point
Yeah.
soon. I Must. We
Yep.
must.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being on the Make Life Rich show. My Richies, follow her immediately. Go follow her podcast, which will be linked in the show notes. And then share this episode with someone you know that is looking to become an event planner. It's a beautiful, impactful, lucrative business when done correctly. And Beth is a very great example of how you go about making that happen. So follow her, become obsessed. You won't regret it. I love you so much. Thank you for
Love
tuning
you.
in.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, so we're done, but we have to